Mexico.
Bobby's beeline to the championship continues.
And this modified gets stung by the Moody Mile.
This and more next on Speedweek.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Speedweek. I'm Larry Newberg.
And I'm Bob Jenkins. There is now only one more Formula One race remaining in 1986. Larry begins this week's Speedweek with a review of last Sunday's Mexican Grand Prix.
The next to the last Formula One event of the season produced a race of more than one first. First of all, the race toward the World Championship, already one of the best in history, only got tighter. That's leader Nigel Mansell. He needs a fourth or better to add to his total, sitting at the line when the light turned green. The reported reason, first gear wouldn't engage. After Nelson Piquet and Ayrton Senna fortunately did not succeed in taking themselves and probably most of the front half of the field out with them into the race's initial turn, Nigel tore through the field, but destroying Goodyear's. He sank as low as 17th before coming back to finish 5th after 2 pit stops, not enough to earn any points. The first 4 were brilliant. Piquet leading, Senna and Alain Prost sparring, and Gerhard Berger stalking. No one risking burning out their car in a very rough and old Mexico City surface. That surface contributed to spins and 5 accidents, but the race's biggest contribution, Pirelli. All the leaders stopped twice for tires, but Pirelli, phasing out of GP racing, adorned their runners to go the distance. Berger never pitted. The 90,000 attendees from this world city of 20 million watch Gerhard, moving to Ferrari next year, cruise to his first career Formula One win and several other firsts. Afterwards, John Bisignano talked with Gerhard and second finishing Prost.
I'm very, very happy to win for BMW, for Pirelli, and especially for Benetton, because I will leave the team at the end of the season, and it's the nicest present that I can make for them to give a victory in the end of the season.
I think I have a car able to win every race. So I've proved since the beginning of the season that the car is very competitive, and if I have no technical problem, I can win every race. So I still have a chance to win in Australia. I think it's going to be very difficult because at the end of this year we have many, many competitors.
Only one dramatic race remains. The top 3 each has a chance to be determined here on ESPN Sunday, October 26th.
Neither rain nor cold nor fierce competition could keep a former IndyCar driver from his first Trans Am win Sunday.
The weather was gray and damp while the cars are being gridded. SCCA officials huddled to discuss whether to wait for a break, but the 33 were turned loose for the 40-lap beginning of SCCA's runoff week. Pole sitter Scott Pruitt followed by Wally Dallenbach Jr. But the rain began to fall harder, water began to stand on the track, so the race was red flagged. 20 minutes later it resumed with Scott once again in command, and now Ludwig Heimrath Jr. second. Paul Newman's finishing position matched his number. He pulled out of the contest with poor visibility. These cars fog up easily from the cockpit and probably wanting to save the car for GT1 competition this weekend during the runoffs. Pruitt failed to finish due to mechanical trouble. And the same fate hit Heimrath and his Porsche 944 Turbo while leading. Pete Halsmer and Jim Miller had this on-track disagreement, but Miller recovered to finish 3rd. Neifel was the 4th leader of the race, but the one when the flags dropped. Elliott Forbes Robinson was 2nd. Dallenbach finished 6th and still has not clinched the Trans Am Championship.
Pete Halsmer has been fined $2,000 and placed on a 45-day probation for an incident with Jim Miller in that race. The 1984 Trans Am champ Tom Gloy will drive for Jack Roush in the final 2 events of this year. Willie T. Ribbs will definitely be in a Brooks Freibarger Camaro for the 2 final races, and Klaus Ludwig, whose only Trans Am start was from the pole in Detroit this year, may be in a Roush car for the final 2.
As the weather cools off in the north, drag racing migrates southward, and like the competition, continues to heat up. Rick DeBrule has the story on NHRA's Fall Nationals.
The weekend had been billed as a rematch between Gwynn and Don Garlits. Gwynn had set the record in Texas, 278 miles per hour, but Garlits had won the meet. And the only 2 left in the points battle. But Garlits threw a curve into the script when he lost to Larry Minor in the 2nd round, missing a chance to clinch the title. So that left Gwynn to go it alone. He beat Joe Amato to make the final, while LaHaye beat Minor. But the last race wasn't decided in the quarter mile. It happened at the starting line. Gwynn red-lighted, and LaHaye had his 2nd national victory this year. In funny cars, Kenny Bernstein picked up his 2nd straight national title, beating Jim Head. It's his 4th win this season, the 16th of his career. As for pro stock, you guessed it, Bob Glidden won again. It's his 5th in the last 6 races and his 51st career victory. In Phoenix, I'm Rick DeBrule reporting for Speedweek.
Coming up, Bobby's march toward the championship continues.
And this formation is a two-step.
Sunday's IndyCar race at Laguna Seca Raceway in California, televised live here on ESPN, was another opportunity for the points battle to tighten, but it didn't work out that way.
22 lined up behind front row starters Mario Andretti and Bobby Rahal for 98 laps. After green, the first pass of the race was by Michael Andretti as he went inside of Rick Mears at the top of the corkscrew. Mario led the first 8 laps before Rahal took command for what would be win number 6 this year. Al Unser Jr. eliminated himself from a driving title with this pit stop only 13 laps in. Dan Gurney brought his All-American Eagle out of storage for the first time since May. Jan Lammers drove it to an 8th place finish. Tom Sneva spent several laps in the pits with brake trouble. Shortly after rejoining the race, Tom lost it near turn 4 and hit the tire barrier. No injury, but it was the most serious accident of the day. Randy Lewis parked his machine on the main straightaway for the crews to extinguish a motor fire. This could have been the most serious crash of the day. Rick Mears said he might have flipped were it not for a new concrete barrier in front of the dirt banks. This battle between Jeff Brabham and Emerson Fittipaldi went to the final laps, but this pass put Jeff in 6th. Danny Sullivan closed within a second of Rahal late, but then Bobby turned up the boost.
I was turned up all the way, but we're just cutting down the revs, try to save some fuel, and he caught back up to me, and traffic got close a couple times, but I felt like we could outrun him when we were in clear traffic, and I think we were able to do that.
Rahal takes a 9-point lead over Michael into this Sunday's Phoenix race, which we'll televise live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time.
Kevin Cogan has been fined $5,000 and placed on probation for the remainder of the kart season for rough and dangerous driving during the Laguna race and for unsportsmanlike conduct after the event. Cogan was the winner at Phoenix earlier this year, the track where the Indy cars compete this weekend.
Like the similar appearing Indy cars, Formula One and West Coast Formula Atlantics, Super V honors are probably going down to the final race. Didier Taze and his Maverick Martini and Steve Brennan, the traditional role, occupied the front row, a harbinger of things to come. Didier led first, but an obviously working better Bren moved by on lap 5 of 33. David Kudrave demonstrated why they called this the corkscrew corner, and later Mike Groff showed what he learned in passing Scott Atchison near the same complex. They are tied for 3rd in points. Didier never lost touch with Bren, dogging him all day, and as they moved in on traffic, Didier later wriggled by. But with 4 laps to go, Steve got past again, this time for good, saying, "I was lucky to have another chance." With 2 races left, Bren moves back into the points lead for the first time since winning the opener back in April. 3 points separate Steve and Didier. The Groff-Atchison duo is only 13 back. Last year's Super V champ, Ken Johnson, who's seen limited action in Formula 3000 in Europe and in the ARS series, will be at Phoenix this weekend in the #1 Provimi car, the same one he drove to the title here last year.
The Italian driver, who was an unknown in this country when the American Racing Series began earlier this year, is now a threat to be reckoned with.
This was the 8th of 10 races. Tommy Byrne and Steve Millen, driving the new Hillmogarn entry, were on the front row. Before a green flag, Sammy Swindell, who had won a sprint car race in San Jose the night before, went off course. While Millen led Byrne, Ross Cheever from 3rd starting position was on the move, passing Juan Manuel Fangio here for 3rd. Jeff Andretti, 2nd in points going in, lost a right front wing in this collision with Fabrizio Barbaza. Cheever may have made a pass here once, but not this time. His attempt to take 2nd place fails, and he's into the runoff area. Byrne's hope of a win ended with an early pit stop. Another sprint car driver, Billy Boat, spun off turn number 9, but recovered for a top 10 finish. Barbaza, the series points leader, then began to move, passing Fangio here for 2nd, and then 5 laps later, he overtook Millen and cruised to his 3rd win of the season. It looks as if Barbaza may be in line for an attempt at Indy. That's one of the pots of gold at the end of the ARS Series Rainbow. This final race in the West Pro Sports 2000 Series was also contested at Laguna Seca. Scott Atchison, who went in with the points lead, passed Rod Granberry, 2nd in points early in the contest, and it looked like these two would fight it out to the bitter end. But Atchison's bitter end came when he lost it and hit the tire barrier hard, destroying the car. His haste was because he had to get to the other side of the track for the Super V race. Number 50 Rusty Scott and number 00 Rich Rutherford finished 3rd and 4th. After Atchison's crash, Granberry had only to contend with number 18 Peter Hallstrup. Rod won by more than 8.5 seconds and became the series champion.
Jim Russell Pro Mazda's Battle of the Racing School instructors, Jan Beekes may be taking charge. Jan started at the front, and after this brief delay for Johnny O'Connell, he crashed off Jeff Krosnoff early. Jan and his Budweiser team Mazda scurried off to his 4th win of the season with Jeff second. Arch rival Mark Walikachuk, second here, has won 3. Points not a foregone conclusion. 2 races left this week at Phoenix and the final at Riverside, paying double dividends, so it's definitely not over yet.
In our next segment, Barefoot Bob has him covered in New York.
And the man who makes racing shoes, Steve Kinzer, kicks home another winner. Formula One, kart, NASCAR, all recognized as Major League. And in case you're wondering, proof again this year that modified racing ranks right up there. DIRT Syracuse Nationals. The weekend paid a cumulative crowd about 70,000, despite the chill of a typical Great Lakes October, dipping below freezing ones. 48 fired off on the Moody Mile. People like Jimmy Horton, Kenny Brightbill, Alan Johnson, and Frank Cozy struggling to get in. The first 38 within 1.8 seconds. Remember, the front stretch here is Union Station wide, but turns 2 and 3 almost choke off oxygen. Pennsylvania Kevin Bolin removed his rook in 2, and then in heavy traffic, 5th qualifier and favored Doug Hoffman broke a wheel, carried Canadian Harvey Hayner into the wall, and went for this flyer. Barefoot Bob McCready of Watertown, New York, may have been beaten last year by pit strategy of Brett Hearn when he was the last leader in. This year, he's first, and it worked. He won his first Syracuse in a year that first was worth $80,000 in cash and prizes. Full setter Billy Pouch was second, Jack Johnson third, Rick Jeffrey just as at home in a high bank superspeedway fourth, and Charlie Rudolph fifth. In the small block companion championship, Hearn was this year's winner, nosing out Maynard Foyet.
The day before the modifieds took to the Syracuse Mile, the World of Outlaws sprinters invaded, and Mark Harmon has a report.
While the crews made their final checks, drivers were climbing into their 700 horsepower winged racing machines, aiming their sights on victory lane. When the green flag dropped at this year's Ground Round Nationals, it was Steve Kinzer in the Coors Light number 11 machine grabbing the top spot. Van May, Doug Wolfgang, and top qualifier Dave Blaney were all in hot pursuit as Kinzer burned up the track with average speeds of over 130 miles per hour. The Indiana native led the 35-lap race from flag to flag, but as the race progressed, concern was mounting over lapped cars.
We worked pretty good through the traffic, and about every time I had a place 2 pass, I took it. So, the way I was doing it, if someone had been behind me, I was pretty well filling the gaps where they couldn't go by.
Only one caution flag slowed the feature go, and at the checkered, it was Steve Kinzer, followed by Dave Blaney and Doug Wolfgang. So after a few bad years at the Moody Mile, today's earnings of over $40,000 just might help Kinzer forget the past.
The win puts Kinzer's season total at $290,000 World of Outlaw dollars. The best estimate puts his combined winnings to maybe $350,000. With the imminent championship money, he could have the first ever $400,000 sprint car season.
Saturday night, the traditional action up the road right on Lake Ontario at Oswego. The Supers had their own race on the mile dirt in the afternoon, won by Joe Gosick, but here on more familiar hunting grounds, old pro Bentley Warren picked up another, while Doug Dodaro and Gary Albritton, who was second on the dirt, finished in a dead heat for second tonight. Pavement modifieds, also part of this tradition. Jan Leedy tried the same outside maneuver we saw on ESPN last month from North Wilkesboro, but this time, Doug Hebron was up to the task and turned him away.
USAC ended its Skoal Long Cut Super Modified Series last weekend in Saugus, California.
Points leader Ken Hamilton almost had the title in his pocket going in. Only Dave Fitzgerald could catch him. But neither was the star of the feature. It was Midwesterner and IndyCar driver Gary Bettenhausen, who started from the pole and led all the way. His challenger early was Billy Vukovich III until a black flag forced him in. Hamilton wound up 18th, but that was good enough for the championship.
When we return, the War of the Worlds is postponed until after Halloween.
And the world of late models on dirt wraps up its season.
The Nashville area was all pumped up last weekend for the Super Bowl of short track late model racing.
I just like the competition. You know, everybody and anybody's here, so it'll be a good race.
This is Gary watching his short-term dreams go up in smoke as Mike Alexander knocked him off pole with a new record, more than 115 miles per hour. Only 3/4 of a second separated the first, listen closely, 60 cars. Darrell Waltrip, Kyle Petty, Bobby Allison, Bill Elliott, Mike Eddy, Bob Seneca couldn't crack the top 10. Well, they tried Sunday afternoon. Ballou and the other drivers watched their dreams wash down the drain. And again Monday night. They should have watched the football game. Rain again. Now postponed until November.
New Kingsport Speedway in Tennessee participated in the Tennessee Homecoming Celebration Sunday.
2 invitational races. Number 55 Rodney Scott passed Brogy Broyles with just 4 laps to go after Brogy had led all the way for the 6-cylinder checkered. In the late model sportsman championship, Larry Moore in number 14 grabbed the top spot from Willie Kraft, but the spin by Moore put Willie back on top. The yellow came on during the race and the umbrellas went out, but the shower quickly passed. Jack Pennington won this race over Jack Boggs and Moore.
Mickey Thompson's Off-Road Grand Prix back at Moonbase Alpha, Pomona. Among the several divisions, the Odysseys began with this Freudian slip. Ken Seal vied with Rob Gordon for the honors here and gets the highest marks. And the main event, champion Steve Millen, having jetted down from the Laguna ARS race, ends tonight's chance at winning in the very first turn, but he battled back here with brother Rod piloting a motorized roll cage, came out third. This final event also produced a new winner, independent Danny Thompson.
A part of Kenny Bernstein's success in drag racing can be traced to an onboard computer. A closer look at it in this week's Bernstein File, brought to you by Budweiser.
Today is a computer world, no doubt about it, and it's no different in motorsport racing, and certainly in drag racing, where the Budweiser King was one of the first cars to bring on the onboard computer. Now, the first thing we had to do was make it live in the environment, and obviously that's the toughest part. After Dale Armstrong activates the computer, it gives us many readings. 1, engine RPM, blower pressure, manifold pressure, clutch slippage, and also fuel pressure. There's many things that we can look at to make this car run better, run after run. Now, it's important to note, the computer does not make any adjustments going down the racetrack. It only takes the data in. When you come back after a run, you have to take the data out of the computer with a printer, and you can look at and see what the car did. Was it good or was it bad? And this enables Dale Armstrong to make the Budweiser King a winner. I'm Kenny Bernstein.
Now here's this week's trivia formula. Prior to last weekend, who was the last driver to become a first-time Formula One winner? A, Nigel Mansell, B, Ayrton Senna, C, Teo Fabi, D, Riccardo Patrese, or E, Stefan Johansson. Okay, here's the answer. Fabi and Johansson have never won. Patrese scored several years ago, and Ayrton's first was last year. But A, Nigel Mansell won for the first time in 1985's next to last race, same as Berger this year. And now, Nigel is a step away from world champion.
As hill climbers go, you just can't beat the Williams family.
This is what's called the Devil's Staircase. It's near Oregonia, Ohio, and it's the 39th time motorcyclists have gathered to climb it. 49-year-old John Williams turned in the 6th fastest time in the 500cc class. But son Greg, who is helped by his brother Wade, took yearly honors in the 750 class. All in all, not a bad day for this Canadian family. A champagne celebration definitely in order.
And finally, we didn't know that the new rules from FISA's October Formula One meeting included 4-seaters. But after last week's Mexican Grand Prix, Nelson Piquet debuted it, here giving kiddie rides to Stefan Johansson, René Arnoux, and Philippe Strutt. I must tell you, it really does take me back to the 50s when race cars were bigger and had doors and kiddie rides.
And we hope you'll be with us this Sunday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time for live coverage of the IndyCar race from Phoenix. Bobby Rahal can clinch the championship under ideal circumstances. I'm Bob Jenkins.
And I'm Larry Newber. The ARS race from Phoenix will be at 4 p.m. Sunday, and we'll have a report on those events and others next week here in Speedweek. See you then.
Speedweek has been brought to you by B.F. Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. And by Dodge, a performance revolution, an American revolution.